Hello, I'm Shute. I'm senior feature writer on the Daily Telegraph and Sunday Telegraph. I also write for the Telegraph magazine as well. We're traditionally seen as conservative newspapers, slightly right of centre, but increasingly we're trying to develop our online stories and our online offerings to have a real kind of global impact and tell stories that carry real global clout. Charities need to think very carefully about what the story is within the cause that they're pitching us. We fully appreciate that charities exist to do good in the world and to see problems and address those problems. But simply highlighting the problem itself is not enough for us to justify a feature in the Telegraph, in print or online. The charities need to think of a way that we can tell that story differently. Often that would be through a person, either a person the charity has helped or a person that works within that charity, a champion who has a particularly interesting story or is carrying their work out in a particularly interesting way. If there's some sort of British connection to that person, that always helps in us telling a global story, because while we have a global readership, obviously our priority is our British readers in print and online as well. Various things fail. In fact, it's quite a difficult way of getting a story into a paper, and there's no hard and fast rule to it. Some simple bits of advice would be pick the days you pitch very carefully. Pitching towards the start of the week is always better for any newspaper than towards the end of the week, particularly on the Daily and Sunday Telegraph for our weekend features, which we're thinking about as early as Tuesday, what's going to go that day. Secondly, don't send over a massive information. Work within yourselves to think about what are the key points to any story, the key people in any story, and send them over in bullet point form, if possible, to us, and we'll have a look and then we can develop beyond that. Thirdly, to think very carefully about who the person you're pitching to is. I would choose a person who you've read their writing before, or someone who you know is the editor or the deputy editor of a particular section in which you'd hope that story to appear. Never send it to generic emails, and never just send it once and forget about it as well. All journalists are incredibly busy as they delight in telling people. If you send me an email and I forget to reply to it, I really don't mind if you send me another email and say, did you see this? There's been some foreign stories I've done that have began that way with me ignoring the first email, not because I wanted to, just because it slipped off my radar that time. And it was the NGO chasing it up that led to us getting a big feature in the Telegraph newspaper or the Telegraph magazine. From the Telegraph's perspective, we're really now thinking with every single story that appears on our desk, how do we tell this in a new and interesting way? Often we will now tell stories in print, but then we'll tell that same story online in a different way, using video, graphic, extra pictures to run a kind of gallery within that. I would think to any story you pitch to sell it in the initial pitch, what possible online assets you think that story could carry. That can be a deal breaker in some instances.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Cheers.